ball with.
Hey, lock in.
All right, this thing's recording, right?
Episode 3 of the Predictors Podcast, week 3 of the 2024 season. We got the talented and esteemed Dr. Preventure, the GOAT, Zajac, Nate Dogg, the Predictor Extraordinaire, and your boy, J Rock. Tyler, open us up with some highlights of the season thus far.
Yeah, J-Rock. Well, I know a lot of people probably saw Bryce Young being benched for Andy Dalton. The Panthers have not had a good season again. And last year, rightfully so, a lot of people blamed that offensive line in front of Bryce Young. They were ranked 27th by PFF. Not great blocking for him. But this year, they are ranked 5th right now. So that tells us that Bryce Young is having some issues behind there. It's not just that offensive line. And a lot of people are worried that it may be his confidence. So sitting him down, putting Andy Dalton in, letting him have some time to think about this may be the best thing that they can do.
Absolutely. You hate to see it for the Panthers. A couple other quick news. We got Tua placed on IR. We got to get those concussions checked out. Looks like the earliest return for him is going to be week 8. The Ravens seem to have resorted to high school trickery, trying to beat the Raiders. Couldn't pull it off. 0-2 for the Ravens. Very uncharted territory for them. Chris Boswell actually has more points than the entire Giants team right now, and he is the Steelers kicker. The Giants not looking too hot. Let's jump right into our injury. Tyler, give us a little update on A.J. Brown.
Yeah, well, as most people saw, A.J. Brown was not in the lineup on Monday night's game. The reason for that was Friday's practice. He suffered a little bit of hamstring tightness, he said. Well, as we know, wide receivers and hamstrings, we've talked about this before. They usually tend to be worse than the team initially says. And now A.J. Brown has come out and said, hey, I'm probably going to miss a few games. From our data at the Predictors, we know that that is normally 3 to 4 games. Some interesting stats on that, though, are if he misses 3 games, usually their production in wide receivers can drop off around 30%, which is quite a bit. Now, if he misses 4 games, gives even just that one more week of rest, it only drops about 12%. And when we look even more specific into receiving yards, which is something obviously fantasy owners and Eagles fans care about, that 3 games, you're looking at 20 less receiving yards per game, and only 8 in 4 games missed. And actually, sometimes that even goes up. So that extra bit of rest may be huge for A.J. Brown. Now, Doc, I know you've seen these, you've treated these a bunch. What is your take on this? One more game of rest. Will that also lower his re-injury risk? And what do you think the team will do?
Yeah, so Tyler, you're exactly right. We're already sort of dealing with a re-injury of A.J. Brown. He's a 2019 draft year, was drafted 51st, second round. And when you go back to our stats, again, check all this out at thepredictors.com. Tons of info there. But 2021, AJ's got a hamstring strain week 3. Misses a game, does fine, but kind of getting in that re-injury play already. And I think those stats for him are going to be spot on. Now, he's A.J. Brown, could rise to the occasion and get a little bit better, maybe a little bit less than the 30% if he comes back in 3 games. But we're going to have to watch this one closely because I expect him to be down 20, 25% if he comes back at 3 games, and probably about 10% in productivity he comes back in 4 games.
Nate, tell me about Vita Vea.
Vita Vea, yeah. So he had a grade 2 MCL strain against the Lions. Obviously, crucial part of this Buccaneers defensive line. And we talked a little bit about Jordan Love's MCL strain last week. And we see, these players with these injuries usually miss games, but it doesn't have a huge impact on their future overall performance. But Doc Lee, when you look at a quarterback and a defensive lineman, completely different body types. What can we expect? Is the recovery any different? What have you seen with your patients?
Yeah, so when you're on the field with these guys, defensive line, they've got braces already to start with. He's got a grade 2 MCL, which we grade these by how much opening they have. There's also an MRI grading, but there's also the clinical grading. So you have to kind of put this all together to see how they're going to do. Grade 2 MCL in general, you can get back pretty quick, 3 to 6 weeks, just dependent, just Nate, like you said, on what position you're playing. The line, much more forgiving in a way. The problem is you're susceptible to a lot of MCL injuries, but the good news is you come back quite well from MCL injuries because you wear braces and you get back into it, and you can just get back in the game much better. Now you still need those lateral movements, the push off, but you can get back pretty well. So I think we'll see Vita Vea back pretty quickly here, and I think in very good form.
There's going to be a lot of people that are going to love to hear that. Tyler, let's take it back to the running backs. Give me a little something on Rachaad White.
Well, J-Rock, let's rewind a little bit back to last season when we had the turf versus grass wars in the NFL. Something interesting to note was that Detroit, back in January of 2023, switched from slit film to a new multi-layer dual polymer monofilament, which is supposedly the most quote unquote grass like type of turf. Now, Rachaad White sustained this injury in Detroit this past weekend. What we know from our data is that though slit film and turf normally cause ACLs, high ankle sprains, things where you may get caught, really severe injuries, grass actually has a higher rate of groin injuries. And this type of new turf may or may not have been a part of this injury, but it's something to note, something to look at. This is the most grass like. Obviously, you'd rather have your running back have a groin injury than an ACL. But the good news is that he got a good prognosis going forward. Doesn't seem like it's going to be too bad. He thinks that he should be good to go, but we may see him miss a game if this does not heal like he wants it to. The good news is, though, it doesn't really decrease performance when they return as long as they give it enough time to heal. Doc, what do you think he needs to do to get this groin where it needs to be to return and return at a healthy rate to not decrease his performance?
Yeah, the key is there's a lot of muscles around the groin area. You got the adductors, you got the hip flexors, extensors, and all your muscles around the buttocks are glute muscles. And so all of those are an important interplay. And so getting really good rehab, you can do some blood flow restriction of the quad, which can indirectly help the groin. Not usually an area that we do any injections for to help along, but we're just really trying to manage the inflammation. We're really working on really good active release, really good stretching, and just trying to get this groin back to highest form possible, and so that it looks like the other side. But we also want to do some prehab and pre-injury stuff to make sure he doesn't injure the other side, because sometimes there might be something susceptible in this player's anatomy, their pelvis or bony structure. And so we want to make sure that's 100% optimized before sending White back in the game.
Thanks for that, Doc. We're going to keep it on the running backs here. We got Joe Mixon from the Texans. Ankle injury picked up during their win over the Bears. Luckily, he did receive an MRI on Monday that did rule out it being a long-term injury. That's what you love to see. He does have a lot of grit, though. He was able to get back in the game. Only played for about 7 snaps, didn't put up any stats that would be anything to write home about, but there is something to be said about taking your body back into a game of this caliber and saying, you know what, I'm going to do it for the fans, I'm going to do it for the franchise. And you love to see that. So it's good that he did get that MRI. You love to see that he's doing it pretty well after that. We'll see what happens there moving forward. All right, Nate, give us a little bit on Isaiah Pacheco.
All right, Isaiah Pacheco, 7th-round draft pick. He got hurt this past Sunday, fractured fibula. Doc, what can you give us about this?
Yeah, he's leaving the stadium in a boot. That could be an ankle sprain. You never know. But the x-rays confirmed at the stadium that he has this probably a distal fibula fracture. They said a fibula fracture. It almost always occurs right here at the ankle joint. It's almost like getting a super bad ankle sprain, except you broke the bone instead of the ligament. So the failure point was at the bone, not at the ligaments. The good news is, sounds like it's non-surgical. And as long as it's non-surgical, and it's going to be healed pretty well. It usually means this is a non-displaced fracture. It's part of the ankle joint, so it's important for the stability. And in general, you can treat this with a boot and actually some pretty good rehab, which means you can get out of the boot every day. And he can work with the medical and training and strength staff to get this leg going right away. So I think he's going to rehab quite well. I know they put him on IR at 4 weeks, but it's going to probably be a little bit longer. Why? It just takes time for the biology of the bone to heal. So we're probably looking at 6, 7, 8 weeks minimum to get Pacheco back just because he's got the fracture.
Tyler, another ankle injury here. Cooper Kupp.
Well, J-Rock, I feel like I'm in deja vu, my man. Every week you throw an injury at me, and every week the guy's on my fantasy team. But here we are once again. I should have seen this one coming. Cooper Kupp possibly going to IR. Listen, he's been on IR multiple times now, year in, year out. Last year it was a hamstring. He also dealt with an ankle injury then. And then 2022, he missed 8 games for a high ankle sprain. This year, he was supposed to have a little bit of different role in that Rams offense, especially with Puka Nacua showing what he could last year. Obviously, with Puka's injury, that changed, and he got a lot more targets, a lot more of that role that he used to have, and that ended up in an injury. This could be really bad for the Rams, to be honest. Now they have Puka out, they have Cooper Kupp out. They're really going to have to lean on Kyron Williams to do something if they want to win some games moving forward.
Yeah, so, headed to IR, nose IR 2023, 2022. So we're probably looking, fantasy owners, Rams fans, we're probably looking, week 7, week 8, Tyler? I don't know. It's probably going to be a little while, and this is probably a 5 to 6 weeker ankle in my opinion, but we're going to watch it. Could be maybe right at the 5 weeker or 4 weeks, but he's going to have to work hard on this. And the problem is he's had issues with this before. So the re-injury rate is also going to be high. You're going to have to take that into account, fantasy owners, if you're going to keep him on your team.
Thinking about those injuries from this week, let's go into some bust predictions. Looking at that, Zajac, how do you feel after this week of injuries? Who looks like they could be hot and who looks like they might take over?
Well, I tell you what, the Rams and the Dolphins, you see them at the bottom of the list this week of the bus score. I am very worried about both of those teams. We've seen Miami without Tua. It is tough. And now who knows what the future holds for him. Obviously, that's something that we talked about a little bit earlier. But the other one is, despite AJ Brown's injury, Philly is still pretty high up on the list as the rest of their team is pretty healthy. They had some issues this past Monday. We'll have to see how they come back and what they can do with that. But I'm not too worried about that one because they still have some pretty healthy guys there.
Fantastic. Yeah, you got to stay healthy out there. It's a hard sport, too. Any play could be your last. Let's get into who is performing well coming back from injury. Tyler, tell us about Mark Andrews. A little update there.
Well, I would say the opposite for him, J-Rock. I know we're going to talk a little bit about who's doing well. I would say Mark Andrews has a little bit of work to do, my man. Fractured fibula, high ankle sprain last season in week 11 against the Bengals. Got in that car crash in preseason. Didn't have too much effect on him, but still something there. And now you look at how he's played at the beginning of this season. Game 1, 2 receptions for 14 yards. Game 2, 4 receptions for 51 yards. Has yet to find pay dirt. It's a little bit worrisome, especially the way Isaiah Likely did in game 1. Are the Ravens looking more towards him to take over? Listen, Mark Andrews is 29 years old. A good stat that I found on Football Guys, they took a sample of 1,000 tight ends. Estimated that 65% of those tight ends will be unproductive after year 1 or 2. 171 will still be productive at age 35. But he's 29 now. He's getting towards that age where he may start to become a little bit irrelevant. Obviously, a great player, but you look now, he's had 32 and a half yards and averaging 3 receptions, 32 and a half yards on average per game and 3 receptions on average. It's a little bit worrisome. I'm not going to lie. Doc, what do you think? Is he getting too old, or is it just a little bit of scheming that he hasn't been able to do his part yet?
Yeah, I mean, the statistics don't lie, Tyler, here. Andrews is, I think, is just turning the age corner. We're really going to have to watch that and see how he does. Of course, love to have him continue to get better, but, from a fibula fracture last year that generally heals quite well, it's probably something else going on here that's impacting him, and whether it's just that he's getting on in his career or other things, but, we'd love to see more productivity out of him. It's probably not his fibula at this point. It's not his other things. It could be other injuries we just don't know about, some nagging aches, some nagging pains, which happens to everyone as the season goes on, plus also your career goes forward. So we're going to watch Mark Andrews and see how he does, but I'm not sure he's going to be back to the form we've always enjoyed seeing from him in the past.
All right, let's talk about some quarterbacks. We got Joe Burrow. He did end up outplaying Mahomes with a pass rating of 103.7 versus Mahomes' 80.6. It looks like that wrist is cooking with fire. After the game, Burrow said that this was the best he has felt throwing the ball since November. He had some big man plays in that game. The fumble in the third quarter didn't do any favors for anyone except the Chiefs. With that being said, he still went 23 of 26 with 2 touchdown passes and a total of 258 yards. Joe Burrow could be coming back, making some huge impacts. Let's also move on to Aaron Rodgers coming off his torn Achilles. Ends up beating the Titans 24-17. Rodgers is adamant that he wants the ball in his hand during the fourth quarter. This is what NFL dreams are made of. You're in the backyard. You're setting it up, fourth down, fourth quarter, putting the game on the line. We all saw the video of the guy at the golf course coming up to Aaron, asking for that championship. It's still early in the season, but I would like to think that Aaron Rodgers would look that man in the eye and say, I think we can still bring home a championship. Tyler, can you tell us a little about Kirk Cousins? How's he looking?
Oh, it's always thrown to me with Kirk Cousins. We know that I hate on Kirk Cousins, and rightfully so. They paid the man $180 million with $100 million guaranteed. 36 years old, coming off an Achilles. Give me a break. Listen, he got the win this Monday. It was a lucky win. Saquon doesn't drop that ball. We might be talking about something different. Regardless, he doesn't look the way he should right now. I think everyone can admit that. He's really going to have to pick it up. He's got a lot of weapons on that offense. It's time that he picks it up and uses them and really earns that money, to be honest.
Absolutely. And we're going to see if he earns that money this week against the Chiefs. Speaking of games this week, let's talk games of the week. Dr. Preventure, who you got for game of the week?
Oh, boy. So I love the West Coast rivalry here. We're going to go 49ers Rams. I think that's going to be a very interesting one. But you got CMC, Debo, Brock Purdy's going to have to perform. I mean, he's no longer Mr. Irrelevant last year of his initial rookie contract, but that guy's going to get paid. He's had a great several years, and he's going to be going forward. So he's going to need to find some new playmakers. I think they'll find some unique ways to do this coming out of the backfield. But the Rams, I mean, they're in free fall right now. We got big problems. We got problems with their line. We got problems with Kupp, Puka, others. So it's going to be a battle of the war wound, if you will, at this point, because it's a very interesting game. But this could set it up for the rest of the season one way or the other. And so one of these teams has to win, and the team that doesn't win it's going to be a problem for the rest of the season, unfortunately.
Oof. Every week that happens, every game gets bigger. Tyler, tell me about your game of the week.
Well, we talked a little bit about it earlier, but you got to give me the Eagles Saints. Eagles dealing with a little bit of adversity with AJ Brown out. But like we said, their bus score is still pretty high despite that. They still have a healthy team. Jalen Hurts is going to have to show that he can do it without his key playmaker and AJ Brown. Still has Saquon Barkley behind him. He's got Devontae Smith, who's an excellent route runner. The Saints have been on fire. They have outscored their opponents 91-29 so far, and they've done it in multiple ways. Derek Carr is proving me wrong. Everyone knows I'm a Derek Carr hater, just like I am on Kirk Cousins. And he has proven me wrong so far. Alvin Kamara was able to get 4 touchdowns last week. So they have a lot of playmakers as well. We'll see who can come out on top.
Thanks everyone for joining episode 3 of the Predictors podcast. This is week 3 of the 2024 season. We're coming off an absolutely explosive week 2. Hopefully week 3 can bring us just as much thrills and chills as the second and first week did.
That's right. Keep in mind, everyone, J-Rock, we love it. Keep that energy going, man. It's week 3, dude. It's crazy. And, again, what is the storyline after the first couple weeks? NFL? It's a bit crazy first couple weeks, especially. Things will settle down, but it's really important to see how these players are doing. We want to get them back. We want to get them healthy, but that's what we're here for. We're here to help you. Check us out at thepredictors.com with all things NFL.